The rest of the world has recognized that since 1945, the balance of power has been maintained by the United States. None of our allies, the former great powers like Britain, Germany, are in a position to do that. Only the United States has the power to serve as a counterweight to the Soviet Union. And as our military capacity has flagged, and more importantly, as we have been perceived to be vacillating on foreign policy issues, our allies and the third world nations have begun to make adjustments in their position. They have begun to consider accommodations with the Soviet Union. And as a consequence, our position worldwide can deteriorate rapidly, even in the absence of an attack on the United States directly.
People look at the United States and say, to what extent are they concerned about displeasing the United States? They look at the Soviet Union and ask themselves, to what extent can they afford to provoke the Soviet Union? Then they're faced with a decision. Every day something comes up. Do we boycott the Olympics or we don't boycott the Olympics? On the invasion of Afghanistan. Do we speak for or against the Soviet Union at the United Nations debate? Do we give trade concessions to the Americans or the Russians? And when they make these decisions, they look at the power of each, and on the basis of their perception of the strength of each side, their feeling of it, on that basis they decide.
The outer world recognizes that the Soviet political system has been a failure. The only asset that the Soviet Union has is military power. They recognize that. In the absence of the employment of the threat of that military power, the free world will win in the long run.
People have seen us going downhill, downhill, downhill. First of all, we have to at least give them the feeling that we can recover. Second, we have to put substance into this by going back to a serious effort in terms of raising our military strength. We're now spending 5% and a bit of our GNP. We're competing against the Soviet Union that is spending much more than that in absolute terms, in real terms. We have to go back competing again. That means more money. I think it means conscription, young people in the service, so we get value for our money, and it will mean, of course, a variety of weapon programs. The third thing we have to do is that in the interim period, when we move from weakness to strength, we have to be very careful, because the temptation upon the Soviet Union to intervene, to prevent us from recovering, to prevent us from reestablishing a deterrence and a balance of power, the temptation will be very great. I don't see the Russians as Nazis. The Russians are not Nazis. They don't relish war and so on. But if we do recover and start moving back towards recovery, there will be a great temptation for them to try and stop us.
When the U.S. forces become vulnerable, the Soviets will know that as well as the U.S. will know it. And the Soviets may read that as an inclination on the part of the U.S. to strike first, rather than to wait for the Soviets to attack and leave nothing surviving in the U.S. strategic forces. This contributes to strategic nuclear instability, to a greater incentive on the part of all sides to try to attack first. And the last thing you want in this world is any incentive for a country to attack with nuclear forces presumptuously, preemptively, quickly.